happening, family, and welcome to the podcast In the Black of My Mind. My name is Al Thomas, and I'm your host. Settle in, enjoy the ride with us. I got you. Please do me a favor, though, and go down to the bottom of the screen and click on subscribe, like, comment, and share. And tell everybody about the podcast. How many bodies? Everybody's. Tell everybody about the podcast and the great guests that we have. Our guest tonight is a good friend. He's an American award-winning journalist, former lawyer, political pundit, novelist, essayist, and publisher. He earned a degree in political science from Tuskegee Institute and a Juris Doctorate degree from Atlanta Law School. He was honored for outstanding work in newspaper journalism, the National Newspaper Publisher Association, the Gate City Bar Association bestowed upon him their prestigious R.E. Thomas Civil Rights Award in 1996 after Harvey represented numerous college students arrested in the city of Atlanta during a Black college spring ritual known as Freaknik. Our guest is known as the Freaknik Lawyer, and we'll delve more into that in just a few minutes. But first, welcome to the podcast, Brother Harold Michael Harvey. How you doing, bro?
Thank you, brother. Good to be here.
Oh man, I'm glad you were able to do this. And once again, I need to apologize to you. We tried to do this before, but I had problems with the equipment. You know, and I say all the time that technology is a beautiful thing when it works right.
Well, you know, for good friends, I'll do anything.
I appreciate you,
a good
man.
friend.
I appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.
So let's get into it. Where were you born?
I was born in Crawford County, Georgia. It's in middle Georgia. My family were farmers, and so I lived in a farming community for the first 10 years of my life. We planted cotton and corn and cucumbers and peppers and raised cows and pigs and chickens, and we fished and we hunted.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like my parents' existence. My grandfather owned a big farm in a southern part of Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
We made our own cheese and butter. And
oh yeah, churned and butter.
And, syrups.
Yes,
it was a wonderful life, but I was glad to get to the city when we moved.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. And my mom's were raised on the farm, and every summer they would drop us off. And my grandfather was from the old school. You know, if you don't work, you don't eat. You know.
Yeah.
So I know that all too well.
And
I'm sorry.
We had cousins who would come down and have to spend the summers, and by the end of the summer they weren't really ready to go back home.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
They kind of came in a little drudging it, but we would always have fun with. There's a lot of fun things to do in the country, and they would sort of dread going back home at the end of the summer.
Wow. Yeah, but we lived in the projects.
Okay.
For the first 10 years, and then my parents were able to buy a house. So, coming out of the projects, man, you go outside, and across the street from us was a baseball field, a soccer field, a basketball court, and the boys club. So, there was always something to do. Come outside, and there's 50 young brothers outside, man. So we playing baseball, football, whatever. Man, out there on the farm, you go up to you stand in the middle of the farm and do a 360, and as far as you can see in every direction belonged to my grandfather. And the closest neighbor, man, was about close to a mile away, and we didn't know them. So I come outside, man, and it was just us, man. And so, we got up early in the morning, and we got on the tractor and rode down to the smokehouses. He checked the smokehouses he kept his meat in, then checked the smokehouses that he kept the tobacco in, and then we would go and feed the hogs, slop the hogs.
Hogs, yes.
And then we'd feed the chickens, and then we'd go in and have breakfast. And then after breakfast, we head out to the fields.
That's it. That
Yeah,
was
man.
the ritual.
Yeah.
And
So
there was a little milk under the cows too, and because you had fresh milk in the morning.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never tried to milk a cow. And then the other thing was there was there was no telephone in the house, there was no running water in the house, so we had to go, I don't know, man, about 100 yards with pails to the well to get water and bring it back to the house. And so one day I'm with my aunts, at a younger aunt, and we were walking down. Each one of us had two pails, and we're walking to the well to get water, and a snake came across the trail. Man, I dropped them buckets and I flew back to the house. And my grandmother was like, "Where's the buckets at?" And my aunt said, "Oh, he left them out there because of snake." And she said, "Boy, you better get out there and get them buckets. I'm gonna tear your behind up." I ain't say nothing to her, but I'm in my head. I'm saying that's an ass whooping I'm gonna have to take because I ain't going back out there. And I think that was my last year spending the summer down there too. Oh man.
And yeah, those are you bring back lots of memories because
Yeah.
that's
That's
what
right.
life is like for me on a daily basis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I think you said you had a brother, older brother.
Older brother, 18 months apart.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's just the two of you.
Just the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Father's deceased, mother's still alive.
Okay. Okay. So
Yes,
you guys moved from the country to
Jamaican, Georgia.
Jamaican, Georgia.
Macon, Georgia.
Oh, Macon, Georgia. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that. I never heard of that
Jamaica.
one.
No. You've heard of Macon. There's a lot of
Yeah.
musicians.
Oh, yeah. Yep. But so your public school, private school.
Public school, in Macon. In fact, in the ninth grade, I integrate the public junior high school. In I think it was 12 other young boys my age.
Mm-hmm.
Integrated the Lanier Junior High School for boys. And so I had this 4-year period in an integrated setting. But up until that time, the school in the country was a segregated black school. And when we moved to Macon, my 3rd through 7th grade year was in a black school, and the 8th grade was at a black junior high school. They don't have junior high schools today, but it'd be what we call middle school.
Middle school. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And you played a lot of baseball down there.
I played baseball every day in the summer that I could, and the thing I hated about the end of the summer was that was the end of baseball season. And in the Sandlock league that they had for black kids in my neighborhood, the park was open Monday through Thursday, so that was no baseball on Friday. I guess they gave the coach who ran that program, I guess they gave him Friday off because there was no games on Friday. But Monday through Friday, every morning I got up and headed to the ballpark and watch games before my team played, and then after I played, I would still stay around and watch the other guys play. So that was the fun part about summer for me. I love baseball.
Now, do you have all the leagues they had Little League and Babe Ruth and
Yeah, they had all. Yeah, that's right. They had everybody playing in the same league. It's probably they broke it up into 2 divisions because they didn't start at the 6-year-old group. I mean, you had to be about 10 years old to be able to play. So there was a 10 to probably 13-year-old group, and then I was 13 up to 17 or 18.
Oh, okay.
When I'm 10 years old, I get a chance to face Johnny Blue Moon Odom, who later he had a World Series.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
But I saw him play every day. He had quite an arm.
Wow. So you played baseball. Did you played in high school as well?
I played B team in high school in the 11th grade. My 10th grade year, I got injured at football practice and had surgery, and I could not play in the 10th grade. At least could not try out for the team.
Okay.
And I tried out in the 11th grade, and they assigned me to the B team. And after about 3 games at the B team level, I came in from a road game and walked into the head varsity coach's office and demanded that he bring me up to the varsity or I would quit.
Mm-hmm.
And he paused for about 3 to 5 minutes and turned red as a beet and looked like he could probably just pick me up and throw me out of the room. And eventually said, "We'll turn your SHIT in."
Wow.
And so that was the end of high school. And so now I got to figure out how. I know I'm not getting a scholarship because the schools will not be able to scout me
Right. Right.
properly. And then the park where I had played ball coming up,
Mm-hmm.
the city who owned the property sold the property to an industrial company, and they put a factory on the property.
Oh man.
So from 11th or 12th grade, I couldn't play in high school,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
able to play in the summers those 2 years. Um, so when it came down to college, I attended Fort Valley State my freshman year, and I walked on and I made the team.
Hmm.
So I knew I had the ability to play at the next level, and the coach at Fort Valley was a really tough guy. He had a policy; he didn't play freshmen. So he did play me a little bit, but um, I thought I had done something because I was able to walk on and make that team.
Okay.
And then the following season, I decided to transfer to Tuskegee, and of course, I walked on and made that team too. Played 2 years. Each year that I played my team, we won the conference both years.
Mm-hmm.
We went to the NCAA regional playoffs. In fact, in 1973, um, Tuskegee became the first historically black college or university to win an NCAA postseason playoff game.
Oh wow.
We beat Bellarmine College of Kentucky 6-4, May 20th, 1973.
Wow. And you
I
remember the
played
date
right.
and everything. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I played right field in that game.
Hmm. How'd you do in that game?
I actually came in the seventh inning as a defensive replacement
Okay.
because I never played in a game that we lost,
Hmm.
and I only played if the game was on the line. And coach always believed that I would do something that would turn the tide of the game.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
but I didn't have, so my turn at bat did not come around before the game was
Oh
concluded,
okay. Okay.
and didn't have an at bat. But and then actually in that game, I did not have a defensive chance.
Oh
No,
okay. Okay.
no one hit the ball out to right field.
Right. They knew better.
They knew better.
So yeah, no, we ain't hitting that duty.
Oh no.
So you went to Tuskegee, and you majored in political science, was it?
Political science, yes.
Now, in doing so, what did you think that you were going to do? What was the reason why you chose political science?
I wanted to eventually go to law school,
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
and a lot of older guys in school at Fort Valley State suggested that I major in political science if I wanted to go to law school. So I majored in political science at Fort Valley, and then I kept that major when I transferred.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a pathway. And I was reading all of the political thinkers of both the 20th century and I guess, the 18th, 19th, and 20th century. I mean, I was very versed in when I was a junior in high school and the leading political thinkers of those 3 centuries.
Mm. Mm. My daughter went to law school, and so I was talking to some lawyers prior to her going, and I was like, well, what should she major in undergraduate school? And a few of them told me she should major in English. It's like, really? I said,
Hmm.
yeah, because of all of the writing and reading and stuff that you have to do, that would be the way to go.
Now, that was suggested to me as a major. I I was arrogant enough to think that I had a strong writing background
Mm-hmm.
when I left high school. Um, early on in my, I think I was may have been a junior in high school. I begged my mom to register me in this correspondence writing course, and it took me about a year. But finally, around um, I'm going into the 10th grade, she finally found the money to enroll me in the school. And so I was taking these correspondent writing courses in high school.
Mm.
So I thought I sort of had a grasp on at least the written word.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and of course, my mom made sure I had held a firm grip on the spoken. Uh, you know,
Oh, you're right. Right.
so, but the other major that people suggested that I study was mathematics. And the reason they suggested mathematics
Mm.
because of the logical thinking that you had to do in order to, solve problems.
Right.
So
That's interesting.
I wasn't a strong math student, so I didn't major in mathematics, but um, I knew I had probably read most of the books that I would be assigned to read in college from the political and philosophical thinkers of the past 2 centuries. So, political science was it, and I was right.
Mm.
Kant and Nietzsche and Tolstoy and you name them. I had read them in high school
Oh,
during the
okay.
summers. So between playing baseball in the summer and reading books, that's what I would do during the day.
Oh, okay.
And my mom knew I was either at the ballpark or at the library.
Wait, one of the two.
So she never worried about me getting in any trouble.
Right. Well, which I was the complete opposite, but that's a story for another day. So you graduated from Tuskegee.
Kind of. Well, I got a degree from Tuskegee. They asked me to leave before I was ready to leave. They said I
Why
was
is that?
well. They wanted Tuskegee to become a national historical park, which it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't get the legislation through Congress as long as I was on campus.
Mm.
So the day that I had taken my last final in the first semester, of course, I wanted to come back the second semester because I thought I had 1 year of baseball eligibility left, and I thought that was my big year to establish myself as being able to play at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had engaged in this campaign to convince first the student body um, to organize against the national park, and then we organized a group of students who went and to Washington testified before a subcommittee chaired by Edward Kennedy, the Interior Subcommittee on Insular Affairs,
Mm-hmm.
and voiced our opposition to that designation for Tuskegee Institute. And Kennedy told President Foster, well, nothing's going to happen. You need to go back to Alabama and work this thing out with the students. And of course, um, he couldn't work it out with me because I was just unalterably opposed to the Institute deeding three properties, historical properties, to the federal government. And those properties were um, the Oaks, which is Booker T. Washington's residence. The
Mm.
residence built
Mm-hmm.
by was the plans architecturally were drawn by Robert Taylor, our first PhD architect, I think from Harvard or MIT. And
Mm.
Booker Washington had he was a very smart guy. He would search out the best person who knew a particular topic, and he would get them to come to Tuskegee to teach
Mm.
those subjects to his students. He went out to Iowa because he had heard about George Washington Carver and he spoke with Carver and convinced Carver to come and teach what he knew to his students. So Carver comes to Tuskegee and he is teaching graduate level agricultural courses to basically 15, 16, 17-year-old high school students.
Wow.
Robert Taylor comes and he's essentially teaching PhD level architecture courses to 15, 16, 17-year-old high school students.
Wow.
Um, and so when those kids, particularly um, who took the courses from Taylor, they left Tuskegee as electricians, as builders and carpenters.
Right.
They could go out and build a building because not only could they read blueprints, they could draw up blueprints. Taylor taught his students how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There were many white Americans who could read blueprints or who could draw up blueprints.
Wow.
But the kids coming out of Tuskegee could, and they were landing the higher paying construction jobs, in throughout the Southeast. They built Atlanta, they built Montgomery, they built Birmingham.
Hmm.
Um, they built the buildings in most of your major industrial cities in the late 1800s, early 1900s until um, your white schools got smart, like Georgia Tech, and
Mm-hmm.
and began to develop universities um, that taught technical trades. Your before you had Tuskegee Institute because it taught the technical trade. It was an institutionalized building, electricians, um, painters, uh, brick masons, and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And so then you then begin to have schools like Texas A&M, Texas A&I, Georgia Institute of Technology. Um, but before those technical schools were relegated to your historically black colleges and universities.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Wow.
So that's the history. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's how the country was built, and that's how those universities came. Why those universities came into being, so that their students could compete in the workplace with the product that was being produced um, into the market by Tuskegee. Mhm.
Mm. So you leave Tuskegee,
Reluctantly,
but but you left nonetheless.
I had no choice. They said
I
I
know. I
I
know.
could not be on campus until after the graduating class finished, and not the spring graduating class, but the summer graduating class. So,
Wow.
summer school, I believe that year they had the graduation ceremony on August the 5th. And um, and so that was the time that my suspension was over because the academic year didn't end until the summer um, graduating class had graduated. And I
Mm.
wasn't able to graduate. Mom wasn't able to come and watch me walk across the fountain. And back in that day, the graduation exercise was held on the Whitehall lawn where we have a fountain out there. And the fountain is a very popular place when I was a student. The water would spring up, and we would gather around the fountain and sit on the fountain and have conversations, so forth. And
Mm.
then on Mother's Day in May, they would come out that weekend and put a board, turn the water off, put a board across the fountain, and set it up for graduation ceremony. The kids would walk across the stage, and in the lexicon at Tuskegee, it was you get to walk across the water, and
Mm.
that was a moment that every student who enrolled in Tuskegee looked forward to it that day was to walk across that fountain. And so I wasn't able to do that,
Wow.
but I held on principle. And,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, 50 some odd years later, I would do the same thing and I would suffer the same consequences.
Oh, I hear you. What the young kids now say is you stood on business.
Stood on business. And but I was named the building, so that was the uh, Washington's residence. And that building, I doubt has been open. Who knows? Maybe 3 months since it was deeded over to the Park Service in 1977. It is now closed for renovations. When the Park Service took over the building in 1977, they put a 20th century air conditioning unit on top of the building,
Mm-hmm.
crashed the ceiling, caused
Oh man.
structural damage,
Right.
and it took them up until sometimes in the 21st century before they got that situation rectified and got the building open so that visitors could actually come in and see where not only Washington lived, but where he had his office and conducted the business of running Tuskegee and raising money to keep the doors open.
Mm.
And the other facility was the Carver Museum. Um, you know, um, so I spent a lot of time in the Carver Museum, particularly during lunchtime. I didn't have a meal card. I couldn't go in the cafeteria to eat. I tried that once or twice, and the guy who ran the old man who ran the cafeteria ran me out and cussed me. So, after the second time I tried, I said, "Okay, I'm not going to beg him for food," so I stopped.
Right.
And I would go to the Carver Museum and walk around and look at all the artifacts and look at the gold and silver that the African nations would send to Carver as gifts.
Oh wow.
Um, just amazing collection of African artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he had his paintings, and he had these humongous cabbages and sweet potatoes that he had preserved. He was on this mission to prove that you could increase the size of the vegetable that you grew because he had this idea, this notion, which we're beginning to see now in the 21st century, is that with the urbanization of America, there'd be less and less farmland,
Mm-hmm.
grow crops on. And so, his idea was to grow a bigger lettuce, a bigger head of cabbage, a bigger ear of corn, so that you could feed more people because you have less space in which to farm on.
Mm.
And so we had those things preserved. And I remember in 1989 was my first trip back to Tuskegee since 1970. I think I'd been down there in 1977 for the induction of Carver into the Hall of Fame of Great Americans.
Mm.
But I didn't visit often.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And in '89, I went back to a homecoming, and I decided I was going to take my son to visit the Carver Museum, and I was going to show him all of the artifacts, right? Because I knew them. I knew
Mm-hmm.
the museum like I knew the back of my hand because I had spent so much time in it. And so I'm greeted at the door by a park ranger that is trying to show me the museum. And I said, "Oh no, no, I know this museum.
Mm.
I'll teach. I'll I'll guide my son through this tour of the museum."
Mm.
But as I began the tour, I quickly discovered that probably 95% of the things that was in the museum when I was a student in 1973 were gone. So when the Park Service
Wow.
came in, they boxed up a lot of Carver's things
Mm-hmm.
that were in the museum and put them away in archives somewhere. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
it's not the same.
Right. Right. No
It's
vision.
no vision. It tells a
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
but it doesn't tell the contemporary story. I mean, you had artifacts that were related to not so far distant past in terms of the time I'm observing these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um, I don't know who got the better part of that deal. Probably no one, because the public, although you walk through the museum and it has Carver's name on it. If you don't know any better, you think you really are seeing something.
Right. Right.
I saw the original.
Hmm.
What's there now is nowhere. It doesn't compare. And then the third property was Tompkins Hall, which housed the cafeteria where I couldn't go and eat.
Oh.
But the significance of that building was it was built in 1905, obviously drawn up by the architectural plans of Robert Taylor, and the bricks was made by the students, and they were
Oh.
laid by the students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm.
and so the building was erected in 1905. Um, and not only did it house, like on top, it housed the cafeteria. In the bottom was a student center where we had um, a little cafeteria or snack bar area where you could, buy burgers and hot dogs and cokes and so forth. And then there were game rooms down there.
Mm.
But also, there was an ante room that actually had a ballroom that had a stage on it. And that summer, when I went down that weekend to cover the induction of Carver into the great to the Hall of Fame of Great Americans, um, one afternoon, I hear some music coming downstairs. Now I had never been downstairs, never knew that there was a ballroom in that building.
Oh wow.
So I followed the sound, and there I found the Commodores rehearsing for their upcoming.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. I forgot they were down there.
yeah, they were students at the
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Ended up They were ahead of me, so they were ending up their collegiate days um, by the time I came along. But as uh, students a lot of students, after you finish, you still hang around the
Mm-hmm.
college campus, and several of those guys were from Tuskegee, and so it was home, and they made arrangements so they could practice on that stage. And of course, they didn't mind the students who were in summer school coming in and listening to their rehearsals. And one day I headed home after I had walked over, and I had headed walking down the street and going to a friend's house, and it came up a thunderstorm. Came up out of the blue, and so this convertible Corvette pulls up alongside of me, says, "You need a ride?" I says, "Yeah." It's Lionel Richie.
Wow.
you know, Lionel
Oh,
gives me a ride to my friend's house. So.
nice, nice, nice. Wow.
Mm. But yeah, so I leave Tuskegee, and I had this conversation with um, Piper Davis. Piper Davis played, I believe, first base or second for the Birmingham Black Barons
Mm-hmm.
during the heyday of the Negro Leagues. And of course, after Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier and was allowed to play in the major leagues, Piper was a little too old, but he signed on as a scout. And during the early 1970s, he was scouting for the St. Louis Cardinals, and he was coming out watching. We had this freshman who had come in, who threw at that time 90 miles per hour, and um, 90 miles per hour doesn't raise an eyebrow today.
Right.
You've got guys throwing at you got a lot of guys throwing
Yeah.
100 miles per
100. Yeah, yeah.
hour. But 90 was the premium speed back in that day, and we had a young man from Phoenix City, Alabama, who threw 90 miles per hour. And so obviously I knew that when Piper Davis was on campus, he came to see Roy Lee Jackson pitch. Uh,
Mm.
but I would always kid him and go in and make conversation with him
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted him to take a look at me. And so, I'm trying to sell myself at every chance I can. And so I would notice he would leave a park sometimes in fifth, sixth inning. And I would say, "Hey, look, Doc, I'm not going to get in the game until the sixth or seventh inning. You're going to stay around that long today."
Wow.
And sometimes the game was so tight, um, and the pitching was so good and the play was so good that he would stay around, and he did get a chance to see me play. And so his advice to me was, they're not going to let me sign but one of y'all.
Hmm.
And he says, but I tell you what you do. If you don't get signed, where you from? Macon, Georgia. He says, well, go back home and you find you a good industrial league team to play on. And if you haven't been signed by age 25, go out and find yourself a good job.
Right.
If you don't take you after 25. And so that's what I did.
Hmm.
I substitute taught school. I took jobs where I could have my summers. And, I ran across an old baseball cap. The team I played on one summer was the Jeffersonville Eagles. Well, in the summer of '75, they were filming. Hollywood came to Macon, and they made this film. You may have heard of it, Bingo Long and his
Oh
Traveling
yeah,
All-Stars.
Travel All Stars. Yeah.
So I still have the baseball cap that I wore the day they came out to Luther Williams Field
Hmm.
to film us playing another black team. And so it was like they came and got some film footage of two black teams playing. And I think in the reel I saw, you can see where they go very quickly to explain what barnstorming was like. And they have this very quick run through a reel where their teams are on the field playing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm in that little quick reel, and you probably
wow.
recognize me or anybody on that reel. It passes through so far. They were just trying to create the image for what the actors, James Earl Jones and Billy D. Williams.
Oh yeah, Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor. Richards played third base. He was the only actor who didn't live in Macon at the Macon Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
The film, and he would leave at the end of the day, get in his convertible. It may have been a Corvette. Drive back up the road to Atlanta.
Oh.
And then you would see, around 10 o'clock in the morning, you would see a cloud of dust coming through Central City Park on his way to Luther Williams Field.
Mm.
And as Richard is coming for work,
Mm.
he would speed in there and jump out of his car and put on that uniform. And he was a Cuban. Said he was going to make it to the major leagues. He wasn't black. He was Cuban.
Yeah.
And they'll take a Cuban. They wouldn't take a Negro.
Yeah.
So, and actually, he was so funny that his character wasn't supposed to be one of the main characters in the movie.
Mm.
But he ad-libbed so much. So much of what he did was impromptu.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hilarious they ended up cutting out all of his stuff because it would have overshadowed
right.
the theme of the movie of what Billy D. Williams and the story that James Earl Jones characters had to tell about Bingo Long and his Traveling All-Stars.
Mm.
But yeah, that was a fun summer. And, so when I hit that magic age of 25, bingo, all of a sudden I remember what Piper Davis said.
Mm.
And so I started figuring out how I could get back into school. And I figured it out, moved to Macon and went to law school. And then I practiced law for 20 years.
Mm. Mm. Brother Harvey's story is just getting interesting. As the Freaknik Lawyer, he helped over 600 arrested students pro bono. You know how many students thanked him? Not one. It didn't cost them a thing, but it cost him everything. Tune in next week for part 2. And as always, y'all be blessed.